So let's jump in on the budget model. So to make things fun, I actually coach one team that is shooting for 1,000 sales next year. And we've been working on that plan. And I thought, it'd be so fun is in these business model breakdowns to go over the example number of 1,000 sales. All of us can think bigger. You might not want to sell 1,000 houses. That's fine if you don't want to. But this is the example that we're going to use to have all of us thinking at that higher level. Now, I encourage you to have your notebook handy and a calculator handy. And as we're going through these numbers, you can go ahead and you can run your own numbers through it. Okay. And then also I wanted to go over where it is in the book and the core elements of having a consistent and strong budget model. Out of the different models, I feel like people pay the most attention to the economic model. And I think they pay the second most attention, or it might be even tied, to the lead generation model. And the two models that I think get sort of cast aside or looked over are the budget model and the organizational model. And it's one of the reasons why I started this series with lead generation. Now we're going to do budget this week and organizational model next week, because I feel like they're the overlooked children. And then we're going to close out with economic model, which really is one that is such a significant driving force in all of us being successful. I have a theory that one of the reasons budget model gets a little bit dismissed is twofold. I think a lot of agents feel like, all right, there's enough money coming in to cover the bills. Great, keep going. Oh, there's enough coming in to cover. It's more coming in than I spend. Great, keep going. And they don't really take that time to sit down and see what the budget model can actually do in terms of guiding your business, guiding your strategies, going where you're getting the high return on investment, and making sure that after all of your hard work through the year, that you will have a profit that you're taking home. Okay. So we are going to jump right in. Everyone excited?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. So just as a recap, if you would like to review the budget model, it is in the MREA pages 152 to 158. Yes, it is also referenced at other parts in the book, especially when you're looking at growing your business. So I know it's also in like 192 to 194, but the core breakdown of what it actually is pages 152 to 158. I recommend everyone, unless you just finished rereading or re-listening to MREA, grab it and reread it this week. The key elements, and we're just going to do a little overview here, and then we'll break some of these down, well, all of them down in greater detail as we go through the presentation. So you want to look at cost versus investment. And Gary has a good breakdown of what is a cost versus what's an investment. I think most of you have a pretty good handle on that. However, I want all of us, myself included, I want to be a stronger accountability partner with those of you that are not discussing this at a high level with me. What is the money going out? Where is it going to? Is it something that we can expect a return on? And are we getting at least 4 times the return on the money spent? For me, an actual cost are things like your association fees. Well, you can't control that. You must pay it. And technically, you're not going to get a direct return on that fee. If we looked at the return on that fee, it would be every dollar you make. So it depends on how you look at it, because you need that to run your business. To me, the investment is salaries, splits, coaching. You want all of those to be an investment. Your relationship and giving deals to your designated photographer and videographer. So I'd like for all of us to really look at, for all the money you're putting out, and you could take your profit and loss or your budget or your your expense detail report. That would be the best one. Pick 2 highlighter colors. One's for pink for cost, green for investment. Go through and highlight all of them. It's an additional way to look at what you're spending. And I'm going to encourage everyone to jump in on that. All of you know, everyone, lead with revenue. So the thought behind lead with revenue is don't put yourself in a ton of, yes, Brenda Piper, I see that chat. We will talk about that more, photography as an investment. So the lead with revenue, you do not want to create a lot of major debt, particularly associated with your real estate business. I'm not a huge fan of debt other than mortgages or maybe your car. So even in your personal life, like strive to lead with revenue, meaning when you're going to buy something or invest in something that you're able to do it without incurring additional debt whenever possible. And then when you do acquire it with debt, that there's a strategy in place that is really nearly fail-safe of making sure that you're going to be able to meet that commitment. Just imagine all of your lives for a minute, wherever you are. Everyone has some level of financial stress, even if they're incredibly well, overall net worth is really strong. Just imagine if that stress was reduced. When you lead with revenue, that will reduce that stress. Okay. And then play red light, green light. We're going to go into that in more depth. Stick to your budget. So, and this ties in with that last point of treat this as a business. So stick to your budget. If you're at a convention or an event and you're strolling through the exhibitor hall and someone with a great presentation is like, oh, you must have this. It's going to change your world. And it's, $2,400 a month for 12 months. And, they don't just buy it. That's one of the reasons why you have me. Reach out. Let's discuss it. Let's see if there's other people who've had success. Let's see if they haven't. I'm looking at who's on this call. And I know a lot of us have already had those conversations. When you've made the choice to invest, don't you feel more confident when you know that you stopped for a minute, you evaluated it as a business owner, and then made a solid decision whether or not this fits in, A, to your budget, and B, to your overall business strategy? It just feels better. I always have to prepare myself the week after family reunion. It's gotten better in the last couple of years because I make all of you promise me that you won't sign up for anything with a recurring fee or anything over $500 without talking to me first, unless it's cowboy boots or a hat. So now that's come down a little bit, but treat it like a business owner and really make sure that it's in your budget. If it is something that you had not planned on that you want to add in mid-year, treat it like a business, which means write your own budget variance and put that record in to your budget digital file. And then so many of you are so good about doing your profit and loss either, and we review it together either usually on a quarterly basis, unless you're noticing something isn't quite right. And then we'll do it on a monthly basis. But if you're not doing that, let's make this the year that you start. And 2022 has already started. So let's get that started now. Okay, so this is pretty much what we're going to dig into here. Let me go. All right, so I wanted to give an example. And for fun, we're doing this example of 1,000 sales. Who would like to have 1,000 sales? Anyone want to raise their hand? Good. Okay. So 1,000 sales. And yes, someone asked last week after the call, the team that I coach is looking to achieve the 1,000 sales within their initial hub market and just a slight geographic expansion right into the adjacent markets near them. They're closing 400, somewhere between 400 and 415 sales this year. So they are looking to more than double. If anyone has additional questions about that, let me know. They have more than doubled in the past 2 years. In 2019, they sold 81 homes. If any of you want that type of growth, let me know because I love doing that. Okay. All right. So we're going to look at this. And I realized last week I didn't have the assumptions in there. I remembered. So this example assumes 1,000 closed units with an average sales price of 300,000. I want to stress, we're going to spend a minute here. So I want to stress that gross closed income or closed gross income is just that. It's the full gross. So when you're tracking this and you're really looking at it as a business owner, you want every dollar that came in as commission or referral fee or from a transaction of any kind to be counted into that gross income. I mention that because oftentimes agents they don't count their gross, they count their net. So they look at and they account for the amount of the check they received from their market center rather than the full gross. If you have more questions about that also, that's something we can discuss further, or we could dive into it more during the Q&A time. The total cost of sales. So for this example, we have a GCI of 8,250,000. The total cost of sales of 2,409,000. And then total expenses of 2,409,000. So in this example, we have used the rule of thumb of 30% cost of sale, 30% expenses, and that 40% profit. And then we have a breakdown here. So the breakdown for the 9 categories, there is a home for every dollar. Every dollar that you spend goes into one of those 9 categories. Does anyone on this call or watching this recording see anything that starts with an M and ends with an S and rhymes with Allanius? No, there's no miscellaneous, okay? There is a home for every dollar, and we will put each dollar in the appropriate spot. All right, so looking at this example again, and we're not going to dive into this too much. For this example and this budget, we went by the guidelines outlined in MREA of what the percentage for each category would be at this level of sales. So it comes out to salaries of 990,000, lead generation of 759,000, occupancy of 165,000. Technology is 123,750,000. Phones, which there's a lot that's in phones. That's not really a good name for it right now, but it is the name that's used in MREA. 82,500. Supplies, 82,500. Education, 82,500. Equipment, 82,500. And insurance, autos, 41,500. Now, obviously, we could spend the entire rest of this call with you guys saying, well, what's in that one and what's in that one? We're not going to do that. We can dig into it deeper, but I wanted you all to see that if you have not ever really used the budget model in the past, what you can do is take your unit goal and your gross closed income goal for this coming year, and you can actually run this math. I know a lot of you have done that, but I also know a lot of you haven't. So this would be a fun exercise for you to do, because what it illustrates is, are you spending too much in a certain area? And are you spending not enough in another area? I'm not saying that you have to spend every dollar that's in the allotted budget line. Some of you may be able to get a 4 times return on some additional marketing efforts. So it's time for us to, just look at that. But this will give you a perspective when you figure it out mathematically and then compare it to what you actually spent. Could you see how that could give you some really good insight into your overall budget? I'm going to throw a little shout out here. And those of you who are in this group, you know who you are. I actually coach a small maverick group of people that strive for 50% profit every year. And so, those numbers would be a little bit different. if you're interested in being part of the 50% club, let me know. Okay. But for this purpose, we're sticking with the budget model. So I just also want, I know you guys can't really see this and it's already blurring, but on page 157 of MREA, there is a breakdown chart of the exact percentages for all 9 of the categories based on how many homes you're currently selling or what your current GCI is and what your projected GCI would be. We also have an updated version of this for the MREA 2. And if this is an exercise you really want to take on at a high level, I will provide that for you. In fact, I'll go ahead and I'll put a link to the MREA 2 percentages down in the description below this video. Okay. So this is going to be a fun exercise for many of you. Are there any questions about this in particular before I move forward? Everyone understands this is a projected budget. This is not what they have already spent. It's the projection based on what they want to do. Mm-hmm. Okay. All right, we're going to the next one. So I want to talk one more minute. I know I already talked about it. I won't go on long. Gross closed income is all of the money that comes in. It is not what was in your check. If you need to write that on a note and put it in front of you somewhere, please do that. And I say that because the reality is most of us are on this call today because we started out as real estate agents and we were behaving as real estate agents. And now you're shifting into business owners. So you want to make sure that you're adopting all of the behaviors of an actual business owner. And a business owner would look at what is the gross amount of money that came into my business based on that sale. So make sure I'm going to challenge everyone to get more intentional and serious about their gross. Those of you that I coach that are very on top of your budget model and your profit and loss, you're already doing that. Let's make sure we're all doing it. Okay. So for this example, it's based on an assumed 6%. And then I have some notes here. For simplicity's sake, in terms of doing this particular example, I just assumed that the rate may be a little bit below 6, and yet there might be transaction fees or fees paid at time of closing, which brings it back up there. Many of you that I coach actually are at 6 or a little bit above 6% anyway. We're not going to talk about that long, but I wanted you to understand the numbers. So we're going to take a minute and we're going to talk about cost of sale. There's a lot of words on this. And I'm going to step back for a minute and just say, cost of sale is if you are paying money because there was a closing. If you want that, I should just erase all of that and put cost of sale is if you're paying money because there was a closing. So I'm going to give you all an example that everyone can relate to right away. Is photography on a listing a cost of sale or an expense?
Expense.
Correct. Yes. And it's an expense because you pay your photographer. Now, see, I knew somebody was going to say cost of sale. It's not a cost of sale because you pay your photographer for those pictures, whether or not the house sells. There is no sale connected to the payment to the photographer. So that is the easiest rule of thumb if you want to get instant clarity about, is this cost of sale or is this an expense? Okay. So same with, I'll give you another example. If you create a property specific website for a listing, cost of sale or expense?
Expense.
Expense, right. Okay, so that it's once someone explained it to me that way, I was like, oh, all right, that makes sense. Now let's talk about it from the flip side of what are some things that people treat as expenses that are actually cost of sale. So I see a question there as well. And does that mean that all of the listing marketing that you do, yes, anything you pay that is not attached to a closing is an expense. Now, to the flip side, everything that you are paying only because there was a sale is a cost of sale. So again, I'm going to give some different examples. Many of us, not so much as in the past, but sometimes in order to close a deal, let's say that the buyer and seller are fighting over a chandelier. I actually have a client right now where there's a big chandelier argument. And the Waterford chandelier that was in the listing at the time that it was shown and the offer was written, the seller has taken it out without telling anyone and replaced it with a Home Depot level chandelier. And the two parties are fighting over it. And you're sitting there going, you've done everything you're able to do. You stood strong. You said, I'm not living in this home and I am not moving with you. You know, you've attempted to let them work it out. It reaches the point where you make the business decision that you and the other agent are going to split the cost of a chandelier. That is cost of sale, because you would not have bought that chandelier if that house didn't sell. So I bring that up because any seller concession or any buyer concession is a cost of sale. Traditionally, cost of sale, we think about the split that we pay a buyer's agent or referral fees that we pay to a referring agent, but it is also any fee that you pay when there's a closing. So one that comes up, yes. So Brenda, thank you for putting that in there. So there's two main schools of thought. I am comfortable with either. When you look at it from this perspective, your company dollar and your royalty is also cost of sale. Because if you don't have any closings, you don't pay it, right? Now, one thing I see that I'll edit in here, and I don't know how that ended up in there, but the monthly bill that you pay to be a part of your office is expense. Okay. So does this provide some good clarity around how to differentiate one from the other? Yes, good. All right, cool. So we're going to go on. And before I send this out, I will correct that, because to me, a desk fee is an expense. I think I got a little bit too much on a roll there. All right, so operating expenses are all the other costs of doing business. So it's marketing, it's rent, it's equipment, supplies, you know, and so this number, sometimes during massive growth, where you're having let's say, I've seen it even as low as you're going 30% or more above what you did the previous year. Sometimes the expenses to make it happen outpace the return, right? And so that's that growing pain and that messy middle where you're like, oh, you got to keep going, you got to keep going. And then you come out the other side, and the income and the return on investment then balances everything back out to 30%. So there will be episodes, or maybe 2 quarters in a row, maybe even 3, where your expense is more than 30% of your GCI. And that is part of growing pains. As Gary says, they're called growing pains for a reason. That is also why we want to be incredibly intentional about where each dollar is going. And we want to keep an eye on that. So what will happen is your operating expenses, it goes straight to the bottom line. So the reality is, if your operating expenses continue to increase and your GCI does not also commensurately increase, then you are going to have a loss in profit. I know that sounds simplistic. I want to go over it. How many of you on here were sold through the Great Recession? All right. So we all remember, most of us, especially those with a luxury business or a heavy listing side business, someone you're all looking at right now was in that spot. Many of us found ourselves in a position where we had operating expenses, and then all of a sudden, GCI drops down, and it created what I will call some stress and the need to be strategic, creative, and pull out every negotiating skill to bring that expense down. Okay. So let's, now that we can all recuperate and put that back out of our mind, we all made it through or we wouldn't be here today. So you want to just really, let's really take a good close look at that on the operating expenses. The two biggies are salaries, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And marketing typically tends to be two of the biggest. So net income, obviously, the amount of profit that your sales business earns. So net income should always be the primary goal. And the reason I mentioned that, and this is heartbreaking, and I'm sure when I give this example, each of you listening to this is going to think of someone will pop to mind. When your goal is only on units, which units is, that's the overriding goal that fuels the business. But when you're just focused on units and you don't look at cost of sale and expenses, guess what is very easy to happen to realtors in real estate? They will overspend and overcommit to buy the business. I'm sure you guys have heard the phrase, buying the business. And that takes a lot of different forms. But there are some people, and it was heartbreaking. They were selling at a really high level. So selling 80 homes, 150 homes, selling, one lady that I know as a colleague, we both were being coached. We were colleagues in being coached. She had a year where she sold over, it was over 60 million in real estate. And the amount of money that she brought home as her net was not enough to pay for her life and taxes. And it was heartbreaking. And it was really because she was buying the business. I'm not trying to make her wrong, but she was just spending, and doing a lot of the traditional, the bus benches, the buses, the shopping carts, the paid, print advertising. This was a little bit back in the day, magazines, all this stuff. So even though she was selling a lot, she wasn't keeping any money. And I just want to, now, I don't know of many people that I coach that are in that spot, because we do, for the most part, keep an eye on that. Let's take it to that even next level for next year. And as I mentioned, if you want to join the 50% group, let me know, the 50% club. And let's just really make sure that you're earning good money for all of the hard work that you're doing, that you're earning the money for your knowledge, your experience, your market share, your leadership skills, your ability to negotiate and protect the interests of your clients. So let's just make sure that we're not letting all the money, all the profit go through the colander and down the drain. Okay. All right, good. And I see somebody that would like to join. So that's very good. And I'm saving this and I will grab that off the chat. All right, so we're going to move on. Any particular questions about this? Okay, we're going to the next one. All right, we're going into some simple math that I wanted to do. So you want to determine, in order to do this budget model, when you look at the page in the book and you see where your GCI goal is and you see the percentages, and then so you make your own example, then you want to analyze last year. So to analyze last year, you are going to take your gross closed income. You're going to take your cost of sale. So take your cost of sale, you're going to divide it by your gross closed income. That's how you find out is that 30% of what you earned. And that is, if you even fit into the 30-30-40 club, is you want to check that. You do the same thing with your total operating expenses. So operating expenses divided by the gross GCI. It's the full gross. I've had a few people that then divided by the amount that was left after the cost of sale had been taken out. It's not. You always divide by the gross. Divide by the gross, okay? So then you take your operating expenses and you divide that by the gross and you see, is it 30% or below? So for this example that we're doing, with the 1,000 sales, the recommended percentage, if you want to be specific, is 29.2% for cost of sale with the gross closed income at this level with the 1,000 units and the 8 million plus GCI that we have on that first slide. So this is something that is an excellent opportunity for you to analyze what you've done so far. And then we can talk again about, well, how do I create change there? And how do I create change without cutting the knees out from under your business? One of my sort of subspecialties as a coach, in addition to luxury and doubling or more in a short time frame, is weaning people off of something like an expensive Zillow subscription or a heavy reliance on internet leads, where the expense is just not creating that 4 times return. Even though it's bringing in enough to cover itself, it's not creating huge profit. So that's one of my subspecialties. If any of you run this, make sure we discuss it. Don't go all hog wild. Don't be like, oh my gosh, my expenses are 41%. Let me cut this. I'm cutting that. I'm breaking the contract. Don't do it. Stop yourself and we will analyze it. And then we will come up with a systematic plan where as you wean, that's why I call it weaning off. So we'll start to reduce it slowly while we replace it with a different source that has a higher profit margin. Okay. But let's really look at this. I want you all achieving your net worth goals and your profit goals. Okay. And I know in our business, because I am working with a lot of you that are growing teams, you're growing as a leader, you are expanding, you are really honed in on either doubling or more than doubling in a year or 30% increase. So it's very common that in our day-to-day calls, we are focused on, are we getting that engine up to speed and are we finding enough leads to achieve the goal? Let's make sure that we schedule in looking at the profit as well. Does that sound good? All right, so here are some questions that you can ask yourself. And these are predominantly around cost of sale. The E, which I put as a capital, is actually an expense one, but I wanted to add that into this so that if you guys were going through it, you would look at all of it. So let's talk about cost of sale gap analysis first. Let's say you do your cost of sale and it turns out that it's 40% or 45% or something really high. We need to look at that. And some questions you can look at are, did I bring on a buyer specialist too soon? Am I paying my buyer specialist too high of a commission split? And did I bring on a listing specialist too soon? Same thing. Am I paying the listing specialist too much? So we're going to stay right there. Don't look at E yet. So one of the, as coaches in the coaching community, one of the biggest mistakes that we see top producing agents make when they decide to grow is that they relinquish the listing division and the listing side of the business far too early. The listing division is the gas in the car that makes it run. And it is the area where you have a lot of control over customer experience, reviews, market share, and success. And I also coach a lot of people who've been in the business for a long time. So a lot of times I'll hear this like, I just want to pass the listing business off to somebody else. I'm tired of it. I don't want to sit in another kitchen. I don't want to see another gift wrap room, right? Yeah, they reach that point. That's a business decision that cannot be a mood-driven decision. So then we look at it and we're like, all right, there's certain things we need to tighten up first. There's other ways we can, increase leverage for you in another area. The last stronghold that you want to relinquish is being that main listing agent and running the listing division. Okay. So if that's, yes.
Are you referring to taking on the listing or servicing the listing?
I am talking about, very good question. Yes. So what I'm talking about is taking the listings and being that main face and voice on the listing appointments. So you are correct. And that's a lot of times, thank you for asking that, because a lot of times all we need to do for that agent that's exhausted or burnt out or overwhelmed, whatever, fill in the blank with whatever word is running in their mind, is when you bring on a listing coordinator that is a salary, it's not a big split, they can service the listing, and then your life becomes better. So we want to make really sure that the systems are running, the staff is in place, the organization is for the most part running very well. Always growing, growth oriented, a focus on high per agent productivity. We want all of those things in place before you would relinquish being that actual face and voice of the listing division. I already know there's probably questions we can ask at Q&A. Yes. Do I coach people with hybrid agents? Yes, I do. Most of them are level 6 or 7. Are you saying, whatever questions you have around it, save it. If we have time at the end, we'll go through it, or we can set up another time to discuss it. I just, most of you guys know I've been around. This month I'm celebrating my 23rd year as a full-time real estate agent. I got my license in November 1998, and I hired my first coach in February 99, and I started coaching in 2009 and part-time, and went full-time in 2015. I'm not saying that to be like, ooh, look at me, I know everything, because I don't. I'm just telling you, I need you to trust me in this one area. It has been devastating to see some businesses that are coming so close to tipping over to that level 6, level 7. They give away the listing division just a little bit too soon, and it all falls apart. And you all know it. You all have seen teams that have disintegrated. And a lot of times sometimes that's part of it. Sometimes it's culture issues or support issues, or you're not creating wealth for the team. Oftentimes though, when it falls apart, they gave away the listing division too soon. Okay. So we're going to take a minute here, and we're just going to talk about one expense in particular, and that expense is salaries. So if you see that your expense category is dramatically high and you already have a team with staff, then I would recommend that we do a salary review. Any of you that know me well, I'm not going to say we're going to do a takeaway from anyone. So that's not what I'm talking about. It's we're going to have to analyze it, look at, is it in alignment with where you are? Many of you have had staff people for quite a while. I'm looking at a few of you here, and you've been working with your agent for 14 years. I know someone else on here has been with them 9 years. Now, of course, you want to reward and create wealth for someone who is a key integral part of the team. This tends to be more of an issue earlier in the relationship, where sometimes agents will overpay because they're desperate for help and this person seems to be perfect. So that's where I see more of an issue with that. The other time I see it as an issue is not every market is the same. A great website is payscale.com. And if you go to payscale.com, you can put in your area, and then you can put in executive assistant or director of operations, or salesperson, full-time salesperson. And you can see, well, what are people making? And it gives you a whole bell curve in your area. And we would do that to assess, are your salaries in alignment? Once we see that they are, great. If we see that they are not, we'd have a further discussion based on your exact circumstance. But that is something that you definitely want to look at. Same token with marketing. So we're going to look at gap analysis. And we're coming up on where you guys are going to be able to do it pretty soon. Some people go ahead and do it in December because usually you already know what you're going to be paying, so you can start doing it now, knowing there might be a few sweetheart deals that swoop in or something like that, but you have a pretty good idea. So what you do is you take last year's actual money that was spent, commissions that were paid, concessions that were made, all of that. You take your actuals, and then you take that beautiful new budget that you created that we talked about at the beginning. But the first time you do this, you do it based on the criteria for what you actually earned last year. And then you look and you see, how much did I spend compared to what MREA guidelines would say someone who made that level of GCI would have spent in that area. And then for each category, you're going to see, are you above it? Are you below it? Or are you pretty much right on par? If I have enough interest, I could turn that into a workshop that we can do together. So I'll send out an email, and if there's interest in that, we can go ahead and do that. If there's not a lot of interest, we'll probably do it one-on-one in your coaching calls. Okay. So that's where you actually look at the gap. And so that's gap step one. How did you actually perform last year? Gap analysis step two, when you're in growth, is you create that budget based on your projected GCI for the coming year. So the beautiful one that you created, like we did at the beginning with 1,000 sales. And then you look at what you actually spent last year, and you look at what you intend to spend, or what it looks like mathematically you would spend for this growth into the next year. And what is the gap there? And then we look to see, is that a real gap or a perceived gap or a mathematical gap? And the reason I say that is some of your expenses remain the same even when you sell way more houses. So we'll go through and we will identify which expenses are going to stay the same and which ones are highly likely to increase. Okay. So I know some of you that know me well know that I love running numbers and doing the calculations. So if you want to do this, I would love to do this. So that's where you can stop and say, well, here's the great news. Even though we're going to bring on 2 additional buyer's agents, the space we currently rent at the market center works to accommodate that size of team. So guess what? Yay, rent's not going up. However, some of your platforms or services, those expenses might go up because of the additional size of the team. But that's what I'm saying. If you want to have significant growth and the expected profit you would like to have, we want to spend more time here. Can you all see how this would be beneficial? And then it can guide some of those decisions. So instead of going back to the example I gave of you're in the exhibitor hall at a convention and you fall for, I include myself in this, you fall for a great sales pitch. Oh, look what I just got. And it wasn't even part of your GPS or your lead listing sources or anything. And now you've got this big expense. Let's not do that. Let's actually look at, what do you want to do? Where would the gap occur? Where would the gap not occur? And then say, all right, well, then we could spend more in marketing. We could have a few more mail pieces in our 42 touch, which we scaled back on during COVID because we weren't sure what was going to happen. Let's re-inflate that, re-energize that. That's an example with one of my teams right now. So when you look at this, it gives you a different perspective on how to make actual business choices about what you're doing with your money. Okay. So then I just have a few more questions here that you can look at, to analyze it. Where were you over? Where you were under? How does it compare with the book? And what adjustments do I need to make? Okay. All right. Going to the next one. So playing red light, green light. Some people are going to say, well, that's just another way of saying, what you just said. But it's another way to control your expenses. And this is outlined very clearly, page 157, 158 in MREA. If you happen to have a business clinic manual, it's in there as well. So here's how you play red light, green light. Are you expecting any big expenses, cost of sale, or operating in the next 12 months? Well, if you're going to double your business or more than double your business, the answer is yes. And you would have just done that exercise and you know the areas where you expect the increase. Has the increase in spending listed above been planned in the budget? Yes, because you just did the exercise of looking at last year, what you had projected for last year, and you have created your new projected budget based on the new goal. You want to list 3 to 4 ways that you're going to hold the increase accountable for a return on investments. And that's where I love to step in. So I will say we want to make sure we give things enough time to actually produce. It used to be that you could really do a good field test in about 6 months. That has changed. It's a full 9 months now. For any significant marketing change or attempt at a new listing lead source or a development of business, if you're not giving it 9 months, you're not giving it enough time. So we can go into more of that, but you want to go into like, so what are the 3 or 4 ways you'll hold the increase accountable for the return on investment? I'm going to give one example here because I think this is where a lot of us could pay more time and attention. Let's say that you're going to join a city club or a core club, and that means you're paying an initiation fee and you're paying a monthly fee. One way to hold that accountable is in your GPS for that listing lead source. You would say, I am going to every monthly wine tasting. I am going to every monthly membership dinner. I will attend the meetups at least once a month. And I will have lunch there once a week, happy hour twice a week. Or, so you would set what you're going to do on a weekly and monthly basis for that. You're actually going to do it and track that you're doing it. And then we're going to have that as a separate source and make sure that the GCI you're creating from joining the city club is at least 4 times more than the initiation fee and the monthly fee. Does that all make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I didn't lose anyone there. Sometimes I lose people there. I didn't lose anyone. All right. And then the other is when you're looking for this growth, it really becomes critical to hold your fixed costs as low as possible so that you are still able to function and create culture and operate. And yet you want to keep the fixed ones as low as possible and then have the additional money, the additional money to increase lead generation and or research materials or database growth or relationship growth. And let's keep the fixed expenses low. There's a team that I coach that they are almost outgrowing their space. And in a dream world, they would have just run out and got a big new space and they're bringing on 2 more team members. And it was very attractive. We all know that. We all know that allure when we want like a new space or a new house or a new car, we want something new. It's a very high allure. And were there some benefits to it? Yes. However, we are looking for that next big shift in production. And the choice was made last week. They are going to stay in their space right now to keep that fixed expense low so that we can expand in terms of talent and additional lead generation. So, again, use me to have those discussions and to, make sure that you're making a strong choice that will protect the profit. And then you can set your own red light, green light checkpoints when and how that you're going to use to evaluate opportunities and reevaluate what you're already spending. I've already mentioned several of them in here. So for example, before family reunion, which it's in person, I may as well start saying it now. I need you all to raise your right hand and say, I state your name, solemnly swear, I will not sign up for any recurring fee service, nor will I spend even on one lump sum more than $500 without talking to you first. Okay, we'll go through that. So that right there is a red light, green light checkpoint. If you take that for yourself, where you're like, X will not happen until Y happens. If Y doesn't happen, X won't happen. I will not sign up for the automatic newsletter until I discuss it with Bridget. When I discuss it with Bridget and it's a business decision, then I will execute and I will get the automatic newsletter. I'm looking at Delisa. You and I did that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you take a minute, you can see. So that's a checkpoint that will hold you accountable. It's saying to yourself, it's making rules. You're making rules for yourself, if then statements. If I am going to increase lead generation cost, and it's going to create more buyer leads. I will not do that until I have had a full discussion with the entire team to ensure that the buyer agents will work the buyer leads coming in, right? So you think about that, and it is different for everyone. You don't want to have such a strong list of checkpoints that becomes like a straight jacket and you can't get out of it. So you want to keep them simple. You want to keep them straightforward. Time typically does not hurt you. There have been a couple of instances where a client was like dangled a carrot. Oh, if I do it today by 5, I'll get 3 months free. If you send me a text that's like 911 must talk by noon, then I'll either be able to do that, or my assistant will reach out and say, oh my God, she's on coaching calls straight through, and we'll figure it out from there. Okay. But so you guys get that concept? Create that for yourself. Okay. All right. So we're going back to the starts with M, ends with S, rhymes with miscellaneous. There is no miscellaneous category. I cannot tell you how much money is lost. That's the colander. The miscellaneous category is the colander where money just pours through. You don't know where it goes. You'll forget what it means. Just a vow to yourself that you will no longer have a miscellaneous category. I have a really very clear PowerPoint presentation that when you read that, you literally have a gauging question for every single expense that could come up, and it tells you which category to put it in. So you know what, I'll put that link in the description as well, and then you guys will just be able to find that easily. I don't have my assistant with us today, otherwise I'd have him pull it and put it in the chat. So I'll just put it in the description on YouTube. Okay. What would be the benefits of using a standard chart of accounts like the one listed in MREA? How many of you on this call are actually pretty closely following the MREA chart of accounts? Good. So a lot of you are doing that. So keep doing it. What if one of you could share, has there been a benefit of doing it in that manner?
Well, I've actually hired a bookkeeper and he set it up exactly like the MREA. And I know exactly where I'm at any given time. So I am able to track my business and my expenses, which has allowed me to really analyze where I was, because I was just Harry Carey. And so I'm able to analyze where I was actually spending way too much, and then
Right.
Areas that I was bleeding, I wasn't spending enough.
All right. So how does it make you feel overall? So take a step out of budget. What impact has that had on your mindset and just how you're operating in the day?
It was huge. It was mind shattering, mind altering to actually see that I was running a profitable business, even though I wasn't intentionally running a profitable business and I wasn't
Right.
purposeful. But now that I am, it feels good. It's making me look at it as a business, not just being an agent.
Yes. Excellent. I think Susie, you raised your hand as well. And I believe you've been doing this for an even longer time than Delisa. Can you share just one positive for Brandaw International in terms of following that?
Yeah, I think it's actually doing a P&L every month. It's not just categorizing the expenses, but
That's right.
Sitting down and having a money meeting every month and saying, okay, our expenses are somewhere, north of where they should be or south of where they should be, but our income is triple what it was last month. So, it just gives you the health of the financial health of the business, which then gives the families behind it the financial health.
Yes.
And you can also have that moment to have those conversations about, okay, well, we actually have, whatever it is, say 20,000 extra this month. What do we want to do with that?
Right.
We don't just want to I don't want to just sweep it into your account and then poof, it's gone.
I know.
All of a sudden you look up and you've got, 100,000 in a business cush fund to make sure if the Great Recession ever comes back, and God forbid that it does, but
Right.
I've been there, done that. And in Alex's case, then how can we invest in other kinds of businesses, whether it's, rental, it's wealth building
It's
conversation.
there you go. It's wealth building and it's confidence building.
It's confidence building. That's for sure. Yes.
Right. So
100%.
it's
Those are great conversations.
well, good. Thank you for sharing that. And it feeds
Absolutely.
in exactly to what we're just talking about. Do you or your assistant produce a monthly balance sheet and a profit and loss report, or your bookkeeper, or fill in the blank?
Mhm.
Do you review them monthly? And if not, can you time block your calendar for this monthly activity? Many of you are on the ALC. And so a lot of my clients, what they've done, if they're on the ALC, so typically, let's say your ALC meeting is the second Wednesday of every month from 1:30 to 3. What they've done is instead of just blocking off that 1 week for that time block, they keep it for all Wednesdays of the month, or the first 4 Wednesdays of the month. And the week after the ALC meeting, they will have their monthly financial review meeting with either their bookkeeper or their assistant, if the assistant is doing it. It's actually, sometimes it's good to make that the 3rd week or possibly the 4th week, because sometimes it takes a minute to get the profit and loss completed. And then in the first week of the month, during that same time block, they have their committee meeting if they're running a committee. So, if you're on the ALC, don't think of that as a once a month, oh, that's that Wednesday. Reserve that for your big picture, either committee meeting or ALC meeting. That 3rd week could be the financial review meeting and the profit and loss. The 4th week could be overall, where are we in terms of the quarterly goal, the annual goal, production, and how are the lead listing sources performing? And what is the marketing campaign that will be launching in the following month? And if you are lucky enough that you have one of those months where there's a 5th Wednesday, everyone that I coach that follows that plan, they reserve that 5th Wednesday afternoon for family time, and they do something fun, like, go to the zoo, but it's an afternoon that is for you. So ALC members, do that. If you're not on the ALC, you can create it yourself anyway and just designate that your business building time. Okay. All right. So any questions before we move off from here with red light, green light? Okay. All right. So that is the bulk of what I wanted to cover in this level of detail. I'm going to stop sharing here for a minute. It looks like we have some questions in the chat. So give me a second. All right. Okay. We're going to jump back to a question that came up earlier. And you guys think if you have any other questions you want to ask now. So Brenda Piper asked, so wait, photography is an investment? I don't like usually speaking in right or wrong. And any of you that know me know that. I think there's opportunity and you can customize, and some things that work for me wouldn't work for someone else. But in terms of your relationship with your main photographer or videographer, especially if you do a lot of listings, that relationship does become an investment. If you make it a part of your business that every listing you take, a raw piece of horrible land, a falling down shack that could be used in a meme about California real estate pricing, I don't care what the listing is. If you say to that photographer, every listing I take, you've got the job. And then you create a reciprocal business relationship with that photographer. To me, that becomes that investment, because you should, at the end of the year, we should be able to look at the full photography fees that were paid. And in terms of referrals back from that photographer, it should be 4 times or more than what you paid. I will cut to the chase and I'll say, I have more than, I guess I can count on 2 hands, but I have more than 1 hand worth of clients that have new photographer relationships. And it was because we based it on that. Will, so let's talk for a minute. Obviously, that's a heavy listing machine. So let's say that, you're more buyer heavy and you happen to get a couple of listings, then it's a cost, it's an expense, right? But if you're taking a significant number of listings, then we can turn that into a profit center, I'll call it. Okay. And I saw your note there. So you need to get a new photographer. Yes. All right. So now I want to open it up to any other questions. And if there's no other questions, I always like to end every meeting with 3 ahas. So 3 of you, I'd like for you to share something you're going to take away from today's call and implement in your business or experiment with, or you're going to revise a current system or something you just didn't know. So either hit me with questions or 3 ahas.
I'll give you an aha.
Okay.
Allowing 9 months for a new business development idea or marketing thing to, because as you know, we're talking a lot about that right now.
Right.
And we already had, so we started this marketing with farming, and we did one golden letter. We had a listing appointment today. It sounds like we're going to get the listing. So it's already paid for itself, right? And more than 4 times
Right.
if it comes to fruition. But that's that idea of it being 4 times the expense is important. And I intend to have a different spreadsheet, for lack of a better word, for how much those things are costing and the return, so we can specifically look at it. But allowing 9 months, I wouldn't have thought 9 months. I would have gone with 6. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and 6 was the gold standard for a long time. So, my old coaches used to say, "Oh, try it for 6 months. Make sure you're doing a full effort. If you drop off for a month, you got to add a month on." But it truly has become 9 months. That is a shift in, I don't know if we want to call it market condition or consumer behavior, or just the penetrability that we're able to have. You got to give it a little bit longer before you pull the plug. And that's important in the budget, because guess what? That means with the farming stuff that we're talking about now, you're going to want to take that and you're going to want to figure out how much will it cost to run this for 9 months. And you want to make sure that you're willing to take the plunge, knowing that we may not get the 4 times return on that amount of money. So that's how this really plays into helping guide real business decisions in all these choices you're making, particularly around marketing.
And scalability too.
Yes. Yeah, that's right.
Great.
That's right. All right. Let me get 2 more ahas.
So for me, it's Monique. For me, having more of a better understanding of the cost of sale versus the expenses, having, the way you explain it is going to make it a lot easier, knowing that, the things that you do before closing, and that's an expense. So that was my opener as well.
Good. Okay, good. So you like the clarifying question, so you can easily sort. What is this? What is this money going out of my wallet, and why is it going out? All right, give me 1 more aha and then we'll wrap up.
Well, for me, it's actually taking what my numbers are going to be at the end of this year, because we've talked about how I'm going to scale my business,
right,
and what we're setting our goals for. But it made me nervous, and how am I going to determine what budgets I need? So by taking this year's number, taking a look at what we're going to project for next year's and how to manage that, that gave me a little more peace of mind.
Good. I'm glad. That's really good. And it gives you at least something to check in with, instead of, as you said earlier, like just going pell-mell, like, well, let me try this, or let me try that, or maybe this will work, and getting distracted by shiny objects. It helps to eliminate, it puts the horse blinders on, so you know what you're doing. Not saying you can't create a variance if a great opportunity comes along. And yet, for the most part, you are going to know where you're going and how you're going to get there. There are no miscellaneous expenses. That's correct. Thank you for putting that in the chat. Yeah, it's none.
Feeling this year, I'm probably going to be playing a whole lot more red light, green light than I had in the past.
Good. So I will end with one thing, And again, I am one of the coaches that specializes in that really fast growth for those that want to do that. And you are going to have more expenses and you are going to have higher cost of sale. That is a nature, that's part of the growing pains. And the more that you talk to and engage with people that you're already in relationship with, and the more conscientiously you find new people to be in relationship with, we can make massive growth, predominantly an investment of time and your talent you've already developed, and less about just spending more money. So I just want to end with that. Yeah, yes, you are going to spend more, but you can achieve big growth without necessarily exploding all of the expenses. Okay. All right. Well, this was really fun. I could talk about this for quite a long time, as you could probably tell, but we'll go ahead and wrap up this session on budget model. I should have this uploaded to YouTube probably tomorrow morning. And I am going to put the documents that I referenced, as well as a few others that I think you might find helpful in there. And I do encourage all of you, again, unless you just finished rereading MREA, in the last couple of months, grab it and reread that section on the budget model, and maybe even flip through and read some of the other areas where they talk about and highlight the budget model, and just reinforce in your mind that 2022 is going to be biggest income year ever and biggest profit year ever. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for coming today. I will talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bridget.